This might sound crazy, but in 2011, a 12-year-old kid would break Lionel Messi's La Masia record and score 39 goals in 29 youth matches. He wasn't Spanish, Argentinian, or Brazilian. He was a 12-year-old kid from South Korea named Lee Seung-woo. And from that moment on, he would start to be known as the Korean Messi. And I'm not just saying that. A bunch of news outlets from back then were actually saying it. Sounds ridiculous, right? It sounds as crazy as an Indian Ronaldo or an Icelandic Neymar. Plus, Barcelona's La Masia had always been filled with talented kids who swear they'll be the next Messi. Yet there was this Asian kid who, on paper, already out-Messied Messi. But the craziest part is that for Lee Seung-woo, it wasn't actually much of a surprise. Scouts who'd flown to South Africa's Dan Nations Cup expecting to find a few young prodigies would instead spend the week texting their clubs, "There's a kid from South Korea doing Maradona runs through entire teams." But perhaps dropping that label on a middle schooler from East Asia felt audacious, maybe even reckless. But for the media and the scouts watching him, it was just too entertaining. So what happens when a federation, a club, and an entire nation bet their collective future on a teenager who hadn't even played a single minute of senior football? Well, this is the story of Lee Seung-woo, the once fabled Korean Messi. By the age of 10, on the pitch, Lee Seung-woo was toying with the older kids. His youth coaches called him not only a highlight machine, but they said he was like a sponge. If you showed him a trick on Monday, he'd weaponize it by Friday. Growing up, at first, Lee Seung-woo was hopelessly one-footed, doing everything to a fault with his right foot alone. However, as his coaches recall, he would show determination and coachability, continuously training and drilling his left foot weakness into oblivion, until eventually he developed a genuinely ambidextrous game. His low center of gravity, acceleration, and ability to stop on a dime and switch directions really gave him that Maradona or Messi-esque aura. Then, by October of 2010, he would join South Korea's under-12 squad at the Dan Nations Cup in Johannesburg, South Africa. He was about to be matched up with the best under-12-year-olds in the world. Scouts from the biggest clubs in Europe were in attendance, trying to find some youth prodigies for their academies. However, none of them were expecting that a kid from South Korea would end the tournament as the top goal scorer with 7 goals in 6 appearances. And they certainly weren't expecting him to give them flashbacks of a young Messi weaving through their defense. Barca scouts would call Catalonia from their phones saying, "We found the kid." Within a week, Barcelona had contacted the Korean Football Association, offering Lee Seung-woo a La Masia scholarship. Then within 6 weeks, the youngster and his parents arrived at La Masia. And in just his first season with the La Masia youth team, Lee would break the house age group record previously held by Messi by over 2 goals, as he would score 39 goals in 29 matches, a record that was already unheard of in Spain's metronomic youth production. But that wasn't the only thing he did. He was also named the best player in 4 renowned youth tournaments: the Torneo Canillas, Memorial Gaetano Sirea, Trofeo San Bonifacio, and Gabala Cup. It was around this time that the first nickname really popped up: El Messi Asiático, or in English, the Asian Messi. Back home in South Korea, Lee Seung-woo became a sensation. They called him the future of South Korea. And understandably so. A lightning-quick first step, sudden shifts of direction, and just the ability to dribble past everyone. One Barca TV journalist described him as a striker with a midfielder's soul. With the hype building up, Lee Seung-woo was asked what he thought about the new nickname. And in his words, he said, "I watch Messi very closely. I want to be the perfect player just like him. My goal is to try my absolute best to become the first Korean player to play for Barcelona's senior team." Fast forward to September 2014 in Thailand. Now 16 years old, Lee Seung-woo had emerged as the most popular youth footballer in Asia. During the Under-16 Asian Championships, Lee would go on to score 2 game-winning goals in the group stages, goals that Lee scored himself with some terrific individual brilliance. Then in the knockout stages before the quarterfinal against Japan, he would say, "Beating Japan will be easy." And what made it so controversial was the complicated rivalry between Korea and Japan. As many of you know, they've had quite a complicated past, and every time they match up in any sport, it always feels a bit personal. So Lee Seung-woo's statement wasn't just bravado, it was a promise. Because seconds into the match, he would charge past defenders and slam the ball into the back of the net. Later in the match, he would deliver a second crushing goal. Japanese defender Takehiro Tomiyasu, who now plays for Arsenal, would say this about Lee Seung-woo after the match: "Once he's past you, there's no catching him." In the semifinal against Syria, Korea blew them away 7-1, with the Korean Messi scoring 1 goal and providing 4 assists. And in the finals, hilariously against North Korea, they would lose 2-1. But Lee Seung-woo still won both the Golden Boot and was named the player of the tournament. Immediately, his stock would further soar, and the Messi comparisons flooded headlines once more. However, in 2014, FIFA would sanction Barcelona for breaking Article 19 of its regulations, a regulation that restricted under-18 international transfers. Back then, Barca had signed 10 teenage foreigners. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter would say, "The rules for the signing of minors are very clear. The popularity of football also brings some dangers. The financial success of our sport makes it, unfortunately, an interest to international mafias, who get rich due to illicit activities like match fixing or tricking underprivileged kids with false promises of a professional career in Europe." And there are theories that these complaints came from an unnamed club, with some articles saying it was Real Madrid. And the result of this, from spring 2014 until January of 2016, foreign teenagers like Lee Seung-woo were banned from competitive play. No matches in the league, no youth cups, and even no friendlies. Barcelona tried to argue that his parents would relocate to Spain, in doing so meeting FIFA's expectations. As according to FIFA, the suspension of the player would be cancelled if 1. The player's parents moved to a club's country for non-football related purposes, or 2. The player lives 50 kilometers from a border shared by the country's club, with the club being 50 kilometers of the same border. But claims were dismissed as too late or too politically motivated. To add to the controversy, a Catalan paper reported that these cases were rare. FIFA hardly interferes in such affairs. But when a player like Lee is performing like he has ever since he came, it's not hard to see why other clubs would want to potentially eliminate the South Koreans' opportunities, and in turn limit the amount of talent coming out of Barcelona. And because of this, crucial years were lost, because by the ages of 16 and 17, players typically need about 30 plus matches a year to convert into potential professional readiness, while guys like Lee sank beneath inactivity. Scouts from Chelsea and Arsenal reportedly offered youth team minutes and lucrative salaries, with Chelsea allegedly wanting to make Lee Britain's highest paid 16-year-old. However, for better or for worse, Lee remained loyal to Barcelona, banking on a La Masia breakthrough that would never arrive. Without the rhythm of high-level youth matches, Lee's intuition diminished rapidly. His instincts would get dulled and his ceiling shifted from genius to question mark. Lee Seung-woo was forced to play scrimmages, while players his age would clock over 5,000 minutes of high-level competitive matches. Fast forward to the Under-17 World Cup in Lee's first competitive international appearance in years. The expectations were heavy, but unfortunately, he would crack under the pressure. In a pre-tournament warm-up, he smashed a sideline billboard after a missed chance, an act that Spanish and Korean tabloids would use on TV. Then later in the tournament, after being substituted, he refused the Korean tradition of bowing to fans and instead stormed off in the tunnel. Korean media erupted, calling his behavior arrogant and immature. His tournament would only get worse, as he would miss a sudden death penalty against Belgium, eliminating Korea from the tournament. And this confirmed many of the public's fears. Without recent club experience to steady his nerves, critics felt like he was losing his magic. And probably worse yet, he lacked maturity. Because as South Korea criticized his poor performances, instead of owning up to it maturely, he would imply that the Korean FA and media were clueless. As he would say, "Well, Barcelona promoted me, so they clearly see something." In January of 2016, when Lee Seung-woo was finally cleared to play, that crucial development and experience he missed put a lot of players ahead of him, and he would play a grand total of 1 minute before eventually being sold to Italian side Verona. Then on his Serie A debut against AC Milan, he came off the bench and smacked a 20-yard rocket into the top corner. This highlight would restore a bit of faith in his ability. However, the optimism would fade quickly. His club, Verona, would get relegated, and in a total of 16 appearances, that was the only goal he managed to score. And to only make things worse, in Serie B, where he faced less competition, he would make a total of 27 appearances, but once more, only managed to score a single goal. By the end of the season, Verona ultimately decided against signing him back. things were not looking promising for the once hailed Korean Messi. Lee would then join Belgium side Sint-Truiden, hoping at the very least to get back in form. Instead, however, he spent his first season with only 222 minutes, with a total of only 4 appearances, not managing to score a single goal. And in his second season, after 2 goals and only 13 appearances, he would be loaned out to Portuguese side Portimonense. Really, this was seen as kind of a last chance in Europe. And sadly, he would make 4 substitute appearances but fail to score or assist in any of them. Following his loan, Belgian side Sint-Truiden would terminate Lee's contract. At just the age of 23, his European suitors had evaporated and his Korean Messi bubble had seemingly burst. And you kinda have to feel bad for the guy. Missing those crucial years of experience and development really pushed him back. And when he finally did come back, his confidence was crushed. Truly is a recipe for disaster that's incredibly hard for a youngster to overcome. By this time, no other club was willing to gamble on Lee Seung-woo. However, fortunately, his home league in Korea would welcome him back. He would join Suwon FC in 2022 and score 14 goals in 35 appearances. Then throughout 2023 and 2024, he would have some decent production. He would be bought out by another club, but he would end his time epically. After scoring a game-winning goal, he would grab the megaphone and say, "I'm moving this season. I'm sorry and thank you all," to the Suwon FC supporters. A pretty good goodbye to the club that gave him a chance. Now, at 27 years old, there have been rumors of him joining the Belgian or Dutch leagues, but for now, he still currently plays at the Young Book Hyundai Motors. But if anything, Lee Seung-woo's story really does show the importance of development. And it does kind of leave a sour taste in my mouth that FIFA investigated when they usually don't bother just because other clubs might have complained. But for Lee Seung-woo, I wish him the best in his career. But as of right now, it really does seem like the Korean Messi is just another in a long list of young prodigies who just couldn't quite match up to the legend himself.